Now, I asked some FPL experts what their transfer plans were for Game Week 13, and here's what they had to say. I think the most popular transfer in that I saw from the FPL experts that I asked was João Pedro. The guy has just been obviously in incredible form since returning to Brighton. Fixtures for Brighton look good coming up. I look at Southampton, Fulham, Leicester, Crystal Palace, West Ham. You know, those are all games where he could genuinely be involved in goals. The upside doesn't end there. I mean, he's on penalties as well, and just in general, he's in fantastic form. But the one downside I would say was João Pedro, and I might be over-egging this one, but it's his minutes and his injury record. He doesn't have the best injury record. It feels to me like, well, he's been popular in FPL in the last 2 seasons. Last season, he was also a cheap striker in the game, fairly popular and got injured. The same happened this season. Obviously, he was out for a period of time with an injury. And also, I'm not necessarily saying this will happen because I do think he's Hertzler's first choice, number 10 or number 9. But I do think with the performances of Welbeck's been exceptional this season, and Jorginho Ruta as well has been playing well. Those are the two players that be competing with João Pedro for his positions. So that would just make me doubt his minutes a little bit. I'm not saying he's a bad option by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not saying he's not necessarily nailed on. But we're going into a really busy period of football, right? And I think there could be a bit of an issue with João Pedro's minutes coming up. But I guess the same applies for a lot of players, right? Not just João Pedro. I can't imagine there are very many players, particularly around this price point, that aren't completely safe from rotation. So yeah, I understand the risk in etc. But I also think he's probably one of the best options at the price point regardless. Now, the experts said that they were planning to buy Isak before the game against West Ham, but I don't think that one game would really put people off. I still, in my opinion, now I'm not going to the expert's opinion here, I'm going to my opinion. In my opinion, I think Isak is still the second best striker in FPL. I know that might sound absolutely mad to you, which is fair enough if that's the case, considering the numbers he's put up from the appearances he's made so far this season, compared to other strikers at his price point, right? We'll probably talk about some of them in a second. But I just think he's an exceptional player. He doesn't have the downsides that other players in his position have, who we'll talk about that. Well, I'll talk about it now, actually. The other player that experts were looking at was Nicholas Jackson, right? And this season, he's definitely put up better numbers than Isak. But there's a couple of downsides that Jackson carries with him that Isak doesn't. And probably one downside that Isak carries that Jackson doesn't. That Jackson's downsides are his yellow cards. He's currently on 4 yellows. So if he picks up one more yellow card, he's done for a game. He's banned for a game. And also, it's not just, worrying about him getting banned this time. He is an absolute yellow card machine. And it's just his ill discipline that gets him yellow cards. He just loves kicking the ball away or arguing at the ref or something like that, where he just gets an easy booking. So he's not like a violent player or dangerous player on the pitch. It's just, I wouldn't say childish, but you know what I mean by those sorts of incidents. This season he's put up some really good numbers, and he's definitely solved the problem that he had last season, where he was definitely getting the chances for Chelsea. He just wasn't able to put them away. That's completely changed this season. You can see there he's actually overperforming both his XG and his XA data, expected goals and expected assists, which last season he was a big underperformer. So obviously Nicholas Jackson is a good option. But if you were to ask me for my opinion, I still think Isak is the second best striker in the game behind Haaland. He's on penalties as well. Remember, Nicholas Jackson isn't on penalties. And I don't think, yes, they've got Liverpool at St James's Park, but I personally, I know they've just lost to West Ham. Just lost to West Ham there. But on their day, there's something special about Newcastle playing at St James's Park. We saw it earlier on in the season when they played Newcastle. Last season when they played PSG. On their day against a really good opposition, they can win. They can win at any occasion, especially at St James's Park. Well, particularly at St James's Park. And I think that Liverpool game you can see there in 14 might scare off some people, but I just bear that in mind when looking at him. I personally still think he's the second best striker in the game behind Haaland, and he's still a good transfer in. Another player that's obviously just absolutely killing it at the moment is Matheus Cunha, and I think he's killing it so much. I think Wolves are really going to struggle to keep hold of him in January, to be honest. I think there's going to be a lot of top clubs sniffing around because he looks exceptional. And so do the fixtures for Wolves. Bournemouth, Everton, West Ham, Ipswich, Leicester in the next 5 game weeks. Wow, what an incredible fixture run. And the level that he's been playing at has just been absolutely exceptional. But the one thing I would draw your attention to, and it feels a little bit similar to Chris Wood earlier on in the season, right? Chris Wood had his high time. It's sort of tailed off now and ended up with a benching against Arsenal. Matheus Cunha is on the ascendancy now. But he has, if you look at the goals compared to the XG, right, he's got 2.92 XG and 7 goals. Now, I'm not suggesting that, that can't continue. Of course it can, especially, you find that players that overperform their XG are either in an exceptional purple patch, are just in general an exceptional player. That's the kind of sort of traits you see of players that do that, basically. And I think Cunha probably ticks both of those boxes, really. He's a really good player and he is in a bit of a purple patch. So my point is, at some point, I would expect that XG overperformance to somewhat dry up, but it certainly doesn't look like that's happening at the moment. He scored, I think, 2 or 3 goals from outside the box that would have been really low XG chances, and that's probably, the reason why there's such a differential there. He's obviously a great transfer in with those next 5 fixtures, right? I'm not going to deny that, and he is probably the best striker in the game under 7 million, although he's getting increasingly close to that 7 million price point. And I'd also question, I think Sarabia is the first choice Wolves penalty taker, if I'm not mistaken. With Sarabia is not on the pitch, surely Matheus Cunha is the first choice Wolves penalty taker, right? So that would obviously add another string to his bow. So I'm definitely not saying he's a bad option at all. I've just wanted to point your attention to that XG overperformance, basically. He's obviously a sensible transfer in with those 5 fixtures and the numbers he's put up so far. Just be careful with that XG overperformance. Another thing that experts are looking at beyond just forwards is defence. Now, I'm not just repurposing my content for the sake of it. I've seen a number of experts that have spoken to me suggesting that they're looking at Arsenal defenders. I've seen Andy Let's Talk FPL. I saw him on Twitter, yesterday. He's got 3 of them. He's got Raya, Gabriel and Saliba, I think, in his team. Or 3 Arsenal defenders of some description in his team. And I've been banging on about the Arsenal defence for the last 2 or 3 game weeks. And the reason being is, number one, they are historically, over the last 2 seasons, the best defence in the league, both for total clean sheets kept, expected goals conceded, and actual goals conceded. They dominate those lists for the last 2 seasons. And what we've seen this year is 12 games so far, where obviously they kept a clean sheet in Game Week 12 against Forest. 12 games so far where 3 or 4 of them have been potential clean sheet opportunities that have been knocked off by just one-off events happening, like injuries, red cards, unfortunate VAR decisions potentially, just one-off events that you wouldn't expect to continue for the rest of the season. And the fixtures, honestly, the fixtures that Arsenal have got coming up, I look at those and I think maybe not the Man United game, maybe even the Man United game, there's probably more chance of them keeping a clean sheet against Man United than there is against Fulham away, to be honest. Right now, based on what I've seen from Man United. You look at those next 6 fixtures at the top and we've got the clean sheet odds according to 11ify down there at the bottom. I look at all that and I just think, wow, Arsenal defence look really good and have a real good chance of keeping clean sheets in the future. And obviously buying Arsenal defenders mean you potentially have to sell someone, and that player is Guardiola. 31% ownership in the game at the moment, so he's owned by nearly a third of all players in the game. But Man City are just not performing very well. Now you look at the goals plus clean sheets, that's 5 returns from 12 appearances so far. He's got Liverpool away coming up, Nottingham Forest at home after that, Crystal Palace, Man United, Aston Villa. I just look at those 5 fixtures. Liverpool, I would say Man City are like 90% in my mind to concede in that game. Nottingham Forest, I think, will give Man City a really tough game to the point where I'm not sure Guardiola will get that many attacking returns or have that much of a chance of getting attacking returns. Then they've got Crystal Palace, which is a decent fixture. Then they've got Man United, who could well score. And then they've got Aston Villa, who could well score against them. So 4 of their next 5 fixtures, I think, are looking quite difficult for Guardiola, in my opinion. And I guess the experts' opinion too, if they're selling him, right? And yeah, obviously at 6.3 million, there's an easy hop-off point to those Arsenal defenders. You've got Gabriel, Saliba in and around 6 million. And Timber, I'm just talking about those Arsenal defenders in a bit more detail, actually. I would say my pecking order of Arsenal defenders would be Gabriel number 1, Saliba number 2, and Timber number 3. But I think you get what you pay for with each player. Gabriel was the most expensive because I think he carries with him the most goal threat. Saliba, slightly less goal threat. Going to play similar minutes, slightly cheaper. Timber, I would expect him over the busy Christmas period with Champions League football, and his injury record is not quite as good as Gabriel and Saliba. So I would expect him to play less minutes than the two of them, and sort of is worth his 5.5 million price point. Because I do expect some rotation over the Christmas period, but there's a double-edged sword to that sort of defensive expected minutes. A defender that could potentially get substituted off early is obviously more likely to keep clean sheets than defenders that play 90 minutes. Just a thought, but yeah, I mean, Arsenal defence definitely on the menu, and people looking to get rid of Guardiola as well. And finally, the last player to talk about is Bukayo Saka. He looks exceptional at the moment, and I would actually make a proposal to you that he could be a captaincy option for Game Week 13. Now, that's a little bit of a tougher case to sell because he's got West Ham away, who have just beaten Newcastle 2-0, so they're in good form at the moment. Well, based on what game, they're in decent form. But I would suggest alongside Salah and Cole Palmer. So Salah's got Man City, Palmer's got Aston Villa, and Bukayo Saka's got West Ham. I probably wouldn't suggest captaining Haaland against Liverpool at Anfield. That would just be my suggestion. So you're down to 3 captaincy options. And when you think of Salah, Palmer, and Saka, again, I'll just repeat it. Salah has Man City, Palmer has Aston Villa, and Saka here has West Ham. Who out of those 3 has the best fixture? I think it's Bukayo Saka. So fixtures-wise, he could well be the best captain for Game Week 13. And looking at his numbers suggest that he's performing really well this season. 12 attacking returns from 11 appearances so far this season. Yeah, he looks really, really good. And the 5 fixtures, we just spoke about the Arsenal defence and how good they look for the next 5. Well, that also, of course, applies to the Arsenal attack, right? They look really good. Those fixtures look really good for the next 5. And I think Arsenal have got a good chance of scoring goals. The only thing that would slightly put me off about Bukayo Saka is, again, we talk about that congested fixture period. They've got Champions League mixed in, and then they go into the busy Christmas schedule. Bukayo Saka, he's memed out quite heavily on Twitter, isn't he, for limping away from games and stuff. I just think he always plays with some kind of knock or niggle. I don't think I've ever seen Bukayo Saka where I think he looks 100% absolutely fit. He gets kicked around a lot, bad tackles left, right and centre on him on the pitch, right? He's a player that's perpetually got a knock. And that would concern me a little bit going into the busy Christmas period, right? I just think of Bukayo Saka versus someone like Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes, never gets injured. His famous last words. Whereas Bukayo Saka, over that Christmas period, I just feel like he's going to get either pick up more knocks or just be rested on occasions just to save him, basically. Just my opinion, but I think he's a great transfer, and don't get me wrong, a genuine captaincy for Game Week 13, but I just keep an eye on his fitness as we get into the really congested Christmas period. Alright, and that's the end of the video. A bit of a different video idea to what I usually make, so if you enjoyed it and want to see more of this, please let me know by leaving a like rating. Let me know in the comments if there's any players you'd be looking to buy or sell this week that the experts haven't covered here. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe to the Golden Goal channel, which should be just there on your screen. All that leaves me to say is thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.